Content over everything.
I can only speak from a purely business perspective. If we're again,
Yeah, but I think this question, we can't limit ourselves just to business, because
Yeah.
this
But
is,
he's
these
saying
people
there's
are not.
financial institutions that are like measuring it, calculating it, and coming out with a value that they go, oh, what are we looking at? And they don't care about sustainability. That number goes up, depends on growth
Figures,
only.
figures.
I
So
get
they're
that,
only
but
going to proceed with that metric.
outlook, that limited outlook. That outlook I say is limited, because you're only looking financial when you're only looking from that perspective. But life is.
To be
well,
fair,
yes, here's the thing. I agree with you. But the problem is, if you're asking me to imagine what other people are thinking without information, wait a minute, without information that corroborates what I have to say, you can still criticize, but wait a minute, you don't know that for sure. What I am taking is information that I can vouch for sure. You're absolutely right. What I am saying here today is not the final answer to everything, but it is an answer. Absolutely. And an answer based on data and information that I can use to corroborate. Now, if you want to argue that you can interpret this data in a different way, which you have, that's a good discussion.
It's just because I think his question was more the philosophical.
I know.
And that's what I was looking for as well.
I
That's
understand.
why
I understand.
I felt like it wasn't enough.
Please.
Sorry.
Thank you. I think it's not enough just to describe the obvious. I'm afraid that we do have a responsibility to go to that next level. Otherwise, we descend to becoming the Guardian, which exactly does that. The Guardian's main ethos is just to describe the world. What it will refuse to do is describe the philosophy that creates that world. To describe the world, as I've already said, was brilliantly done by you.
Thank
I
you.
don't disagree with. But it's not enough just to present that without the backing. And yes, you don't need to know people's minds.
You can look at their history, their background.
You can look at
know.
the world today.
Yeah.
The world today is full of violence and poverty.
Exactly.
We know this is the product of another human being's mind. We are living their mind, and their mind is poverty, hatred, division, war, rape, and looting of other countries.
Okay.
We know their minds because we live and breathe it every single day. Breathe it. Yes, polluted. You're killing us.
Yeah.
We need to do the why and step up on our ladders and do that. Sorry for being so
Not at all.
critical.
No.
I'm a great admirer of yours.
Criticism is important, and I'll put it to you this way, Dust. I largely agree with your criticism. If there is anything that I lament in my explanation, is that I cannot speak more. I do not have access to the inner workings and the inner minds. All I can do is observe as an outsider. But there is something interesting that you guys did bring up, and that is the idea of externalizing my costs. This is not a philosophy. This is, again, something we've observed since the late 1980s. Who here has called a hotline and gotten press 1 for this, press 2 for that? Now here's an interesting thing. Why do these exist? Why do they exist? I mean, a large part of what we're trying to do is to cut cost, but as part of cutting the cost, we've pushed the cost of taking care of a receptionist, of taking care of our business, of taking care of our work on the consumer. It is now up to me as a consumer to sit there, press 1 to talk about broadband, press 2 to get the customer service, press 3 to... Now it's on me to carry that cost. It's not on the company anymore. Yeah. So if it's anything in terms of philosophy, it's down to this very basic concept that for a business to be successful, it needs to push out as much of its costs as possible and to maintain as much of its profit as possible.
Yeah,
That's the underlying operating system. Yes, Jamie, you were waiting patiently.
Free market exists without these corporations, stamping out any of the competition because they took co-deal with the governments.
Sorry, I don't
Can
understand.
the free market exist without those
No, it's not saying that. It's not saying that.
Wait, let him finish.
Can there be a free market without these corporations, stamping out the competition?
Yes, and I'll tell you why.
And is it desirable?
And I'll tell you why. Let's forget socialism, capitalism debates for a moment. Let's go back to the 1930s, the Great Depression in the United States, and Frederick Delano Roosevelt's response to the Great Depression. What did they do? They broke up the big companies. They broke up the big banks. Standard Oil, General Motors, all of those companies were divvied up into smaller and smaller companies. In the 1920s and the 1930s, we were consciously aware of the dangers of monopoly and the kinds of injustices and inequalities that monopoly can create. And as such, there is a long library of antitrust laws and laws that are designed to keep monopolies out of the picture, specifically to protect from this kind of behavior. The problem we have today is that these laws are largely ignored and are largely lobbied out. The United States, agree or disagree with their economic and foreign policy, has one of the most robust antitrust laws in the 20th century. Is it surprising that they don't apply any of it? That big super PACs have invested billions of dollars to lobby against monopoly and appoint their own people, companies like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, etc., as the head of antitrust law legislation units. So it shouldn't come as a surprise. But there is an upside. Funny enough, the Republican Party, of all parties that you'd think would come up with this, Marco Rubio is the head of the Small Business Administration Unit in the United States. And he's the guy actually speaking about monopoly these days. Of all people, it's not Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, it's actually Marco Rubio from the Republican Party. Now that to me was a surprise. I was not expecting it. So it signals that there might be a change coming down the future. But then again, you never know what's going to happen. So we're going to have to wait and see.
Well, Trump is starting to get more tough on immigration.
What does that have to do with monopoly?
Because monopolies want cheap labour to come into America.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
I got a question. You said about like the people who have all the capital, they can make profit very easily by not actually doing stuff. They just like delegate it to the producers or whatever. And then you said what their focus is and what they analyse is growth. And so they put their things wherever they can grow their money. But they don't look at sustainability. So they would just keep growing, they run away and grow and run away and just destroy as they go, whatever. They're not caring about other things. And then this chap asked a question like, well, can't they just like look at sustainability? And then so my question is there any like financial institutes that hold a lot of capital that can just like rewrite their formulas so that they account for sustainability?
So to answer that, yes. There are companies that are doing this, but funny enough, few of them are in the United States. If you want to look at worker-owned collectives here in Europe, if you look at Italy, Spain, Germany, and some parts of Latin America, there are companies that they're actually doing this. The only downside is that if you want to appear successful in the global market, the financial culture today values something over. I'll put it to you this way. You can have a very talented actor or actress that isn't very handsome, you know what I mean, or isn't particularly good looking. With a little bit of makeup that can change it, but no one's going to hire an ugly actor who is particularly talented. You see what I mean? That's the main thing. It's
voice acting. Maybe for voice acting.
Maybe voice, yeah, the face that's perfect for the radio. Yeah.
Have you thought about it? It could actually be quite obvious, isn't it? We can do anything with numbers. We can model all sorts of things. So we could remodel sustainability ideas within everything. It then comes then, and then it does fall back to that philosophy of like, what are we going to allow this impact, or are we just going to be like, fuck it, growth?
The issue,
and so it is that.
You're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely. It's what Douglas Rushkoff and a lot of futurists call the underlying operating system.
Yeah, there we go. We got it.
And here's the thing. Here's an interesting thing. And here's something that I think you'd find interesting. So there's a fantastic, I'll remind me to send you this one, Dust. Something that Douglas Rushkoff did was called Survival of the Richest. Very scary title. So if you haven't heard of Douglas Rushkoff, he's one of those futurists, Team Human, Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. And he was called in by a bunch of unnamed Silicon Valley elites to give a talk. To talk about Bitcoin, to talk about Ethereum, where technology is going in the future, what have you. And they ended up asking him a question about, okay, where should we go if the event is to occur? Now, what is the event? That's a major natural disaster, a virus, etc., that renders, and I quote, all the money we've made worthless. That's the question that they asked. And they asked him another scarier question. If I've hired a security team, how can I control my security team if I can't actually pay them? Now, this is how the wealthy Silicon Valley elite were thinking about the end of the world. And they were asking Douglas Rushkoff about it. How do I actually pay my security forces to protect me when the money I have is worth zero? And they were coming up with weird ideas like, oh, we're going to put locks on our food so where we only know the password, or we're going to put some disciplinary collars on our security forces, or I don't know, we'll find a way to upload our consciousness onto the internet, blah, blah, blah. The wealthy of the world are actually terrified. They're terrified that the most that they can do is escape events. They can't change events. And that's the thing. From a psychological perspective, the wealthy of the world find safety in their wealth. But it can't save them should shit hit the fan and your food becomes radioactive and money and is worth nothing.
Do you think if we do have sustainability in all everything, minerals, food, one thing, it will be lot more. It will become cheaper. The elites won't have the hold on people. Do you think that's a plot not to have sustainability?
Yes and no. Historically, around the time of the Crusades, the Western soldiers that were coming back home imported the idea of the bazaar from their experiences in the Middle East, and they brought it with them to Europe. Now, to set up a bazaar, that's what you would call a peer-to-peer economic exchange. So people would set up currency for the day and trade with one another as peers using this currency that was set up temporarily. And the interesting side effect of that is that it made the regular people, they made their wealth increase, but the aristocrats, who had never worked for thousands of years and were descended from royalty, were getting relatively poorer. And here's the interesting thing that happened after that. What happened after that was the concept of the chartered monopoly.
No, he's not. This guy's well clever. He's talking sense.
The chartered monopoly.
You couldn't answer that the other week about vaccines, could you, mate? You couldn't answer about vaccines. You want to rip that up as well?
You probably don't know.
He does. He's meant to have a PhD in make vaccines.
I'm not talking about vaccines, man. We can have that discussion later.
Yeah, we will. But you ripped it up last week, though, mate. Remember?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, why'd you rip it up?
You're disturbing.
Because it's stupid.
You're disturbing.
I'll do what I want, mate. Speaker's corner. I'm asking Dickon why you ripped it up.
Hey, leave it
Why'd
out,
you rip
mate.
it up?
Leave it out,
Because
mate.
it's
What are you
stupid. Any other
doing?
questions?
It's stupid.
Yes.
All right, you think it's stupid. I'll show you ain't
I
fucking
know,
stupid.
so I can use mine to tell him.
But you're paid for by Bill Gates, you fucking nonce.
Can't hear you,
Paid
mate.
for by Bill Gates. You
Have a
don't
nice
pay
day.
I'll be
you.
back for you. prick.
Goodbye.
I'm gonna go and have a fag.
Goodbye.
You can't run from the truth. You can't run from the truth.
Smoking's very bad for your health. The
So
science is
what? It's
very
my
clear.
fucking body. At least I choose what to do. I don't want to be fucking forced on me by his
enjoy.
Nazi friends.
Go enjoy.
I will. Thank you, mate.
So chartered monopolies were set up around the 12th and 13th century by royalty, whereby if you were a trader of, say, potatoes, you now had to pay allegiance to a particular member of the royal family or one of his friends, and suddenly the idea of a central currency became the norm. And suddenly,
by the balls then.
exactly, now you had to work for designated individuals and abide by a law of a central
they could
currency
put
that
up-
was set from the top down. So I don't know. Yeah, you were the one who asked. So yes, with sustainability, it is doable, but historically examples of that have been oppressed from the top down, largely for security reasons.
If I look around this earth, all over the world, I see barren land where miners have been and all that, less than 30. Now those land could easily be nurtured. Plant trees, vegetation, get rain. Plant enough food to fill the world 10 times over. But the value of it will be
Exactly.
minerals, the recycling now,
Exactly.
obviously, you know.
And I'll give you another one. I give you another example. So during the lockdown crisis, companies had to throw out milk, perfectly
Yeah,
reasonable,
yeah.
because they didn't have a venue to sell it.
Beer as well.
Exactly. There's perfectly edible food that you can give away, that you can store, you can do anything, and instead of doing that, they would simply throw it out.
We got a vaccine denier in the audience.
Yeah. I'm being heckled.
What do you think about vaccine?
Undecided.
Undecided on a vaccine.
Undecided on forced vaccine.
Do you think, in your theory, do you think it'll go off, the Big Bang one day?
Sorry?
Do you think the Big Bang will happen one day?
The Big Bang.
The world World nuclear war, everything, virus.
It's possible. I'll put it to you this way, man. If you're going to account for human stupidity and time, then you need to temper your optimism. Let's put it that way.
Well, that's not fair. You can't say human stupidity.
And time. And time.
Yeah, time you can say. I mean, that makes perfect
It only
sense.
has to happen once.
But it's not human stupidity, because the majority of people on the planet, of course,
Yeah.
are stupid and wise, don't want nuclear war.
I
But
agree.
there is a very small group of people who own the nuclear bombs
Agreed.
and actually would love on any opportunity to detonate those nuclear bombs. So it's just not to use such a broad brush of describing who's guilty.
Oh yeah.
Seems a little bit unnecessary when it's very clear who the guilty parties are. So I'm going to bring it up on that.
So to be fair, you're absolutely right. That is a generalization. But the reason I am so pessimistic is when I look at events today. If you look at, for example, arguments against COVID-19, or that guy over there talking about vaccines,
Don't bring him into it.
or whatever number of subjects, you will note that if it doesn't matter what facts or information you present, people will take a partisan position based on how they feel rather than on, yes.
That is obviously true.
Yeah.
I do not deny that. But he didn't design coronavirus. I'm not suggesting it was designed, by the way. And he didn't design and make and fund nuclear bombs. So it's kind of immaterial what his attitude is to his own personal environment.
It depends.
It's what's material is the people who own deadly weapons and they're actually, as you know, chemical weapons designed by people in Oxbridge and whatnot.
It depends.
They're the people that
No, I totally agree with you. It's like,
should
again,
be pointed out.
the brightest
Not
minds
Potential
of
idiots.
the early 20th century spent their time designing nuclear weapons. If you're talking Richard Oppenheimer, Albert Einstein, Paul Dirac, all of their work, they're some of the most intelligent human beings in the 20th century. And what was the output of their work? A weapon that was designed to annihilate entire cities in a few seconds. I totally understand that. But then you have a guy like Donald Trump sitting in office today saying, hey, why don't we use them? So the guy making the decision isn't Albert Einstein. You know, the guy making the decision to press the button is a reality TV show star. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So if you combine probability, stupidity, and time, you are stuck with a point where it's just waiting for something to happen.
So you're calling Albert Einstein stupid?
No, I'm calling Trump stupid.
No, I think you should call Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, when making that nuclear bomb, should have been classed as stupid. He believed a lie told to him, as the others did.
Yep.
A lie was created around them,
Yep.
and in that lie, they thought, we are now obliged to do something we think is stupid. And then it turned bleeding obvious why it was a lie.
Yep.
And therefore, we are at right to call Albert Einstein stupid in that moment. He was an absolute moron, same with Oppenheimer as well. He should have known better that the only people that can design a nuclear bomb were the people not in Germany. The only people that designed that nuclear bomb were in America, being asked by the Nazis.
And Russia.
There's no nuclear bomb development in Russia.
Really?
No, the only reason why Russia ended up with nuclear weapons
Oh, okay. Yeah.
was because those people we're talking about thought, oh shit, we've really fucked up here. We better give other people the secrets to this nuclear web.
Do you think
Sorry. Yeah.
the elites at the top believe in money or their own faith? Do you think they've got a faith, some sort of destiny, a faith?
I don't know.
Or money? Do you think money is just a passing or a living stage towards their faith?
So,
Because I ponder on that sometimes. All these people have got billions and billions. I say to myself, what do they believe in? What is their goal?
that's a good question. I don't have access to those people, so I can't tell you.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I can tell you this much.
Go on.
If you look at Jeff Bezos, who's currently the richest man in the world,
Yeah.
is not faithful at all. Is actually pretty unscrupulous and pragmatic about the way he does things. He's not coming from a religious perspective on accumulating money. He just happened to make some good decisions, made a lot of money off of it, and then got much more effective and greedier at it. So I don't think it's a religious idea or a faith. It's just that I think it's much more down to earth and ugly than no, I have some supreme idea that I'm faithful.
It just makes me wonder sometimes, you know, what's their belief, what's their aim, their goal?
We should be heading for a world where it's less consumption driven and more capital creation.
Yep, and I'd add a third part to that, not just capital creation, but also capital circulation.
Well, how do we create capital creation?
Then we need to find a way to generate value that is not based on financialization, based on actual stuff.
It's on genetics.
That's another story, genetics. Anyway, are there any other questions, guys?
Do you think generally that there is too much regulation or not enough regulation? And maybe in the context of the vaccine guy over there, I said because I'm probably more in favour of freer markets, and so
it depends.
To use a vaccine example, I'd say something like the smallpox vaccine was incredibly successful. But then nowadays there's a lot of health regulation, especially in the US, which is pretty much where most of the vaccine and medicine research happens. And nowadays it costs $1 billion in 10 years to get through the regulations to create a new vaccine. Essentially a vaccine like a smallpox vaccine couldn't be created today by anyone other than maybe 2 mega corporations. And do you blame the corporations or the government for that? Do you think it's purely lobbying, or do you think the government needs to take some...
No, it's a good question. So let's take vaccines out of it, because that's a very specific subject. But what I want to do is compare, for example, the airline industry to the financial industry. Okay? How safe do you think aircraft are?
Pretty safe.
Aircraft are pretty safe. And why is that? Because again, the priority is based on engineering and based on a very rigorous set of safety standards where adoption of new features can only occur after it has been proven conclusively before it gets put into the aircraft. And one of the reasons we had the problem with the Boeing 737 MAX was because they decided to relax the regulations and decided to focus on a sales dimension of the aircraft rather than the engineering. So the regulation in the case of airline industry was surprisingly effective. Now, the other dimension that you asked in terms of big pharma, again, if you want to reduce regulations on big pharma, are you willing to accommodate the risk of people putting shit in medicine without testing and pre-testing? Again, you see what I mean?
Yeah, potentially. Yes, because sometimes the risks the rewards may outweigh the risk.
But that
one in between could be something like, because at the moment, to get a drug past the FDA, you need to conclusively prove that it is both safe for consumption and that it is effective in what it is trying to do.
Absolutely.
A middle ground could be that you need to ensure it is safe for consumption and it is not necessarily conclusively prove that it's doing what it's designed to do. That could maybe change it from $1 billion down to $500 million, maybe 10 years down to a few years, and then you could get the next smallpox or coronavirus vaccine, whatever, without a huge delay. It could allow more innovation.
I understand the argument, and I do understand the argument. But the point I'm trying to get across is this. There's 2 dimensions to regulations. The first dimension is, why do regulations exist in the first place? And the second dimension is, once they exist, are there ways to get around them? Now, the first dimension, now here's something most people don't understand about regulations, and it's kind of a little rule I have in my head. Regulations are written in blood. You have to take that into account. What does that mean? For a regulation to exist, it's not that, someone got hurt because they used the medicine or someone drank something. No, it has to be hundreds of people. And these hundreds of people have to take that case to some court, and it has to be strong enough for the court to take it up to, say, a national level and impose that on companies in order to protect them from its effects. So that's a lot of people who have to get hurt. Now, this is a successful setting of a regulation. Here's the thing that's going to terrify you. Once that process is set in place, a lot of different interests can come in and change the regulation to suit their advantages and suit their needs. And even then, let's assume that it happens and it is implemented fairly and accurately. Now that you have a certain cartel or certain companies that have significant amount of money, they can lobby against the application of regulations. So if you're talking about antitrust in the United States, these anti-monopoly laws, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, the Koch brothers, what have you, are lobbying billions of dollars a year to dispute laws that have been on the books since Roosevelt was president. So I understand that, yes, there are times where it is more efficient to circumvent the rules in order to help as many people as possible. I completely agree. But what is the cost of that? That's the thing that we need to think about.
I think I'd add one more thing about, so sometimes the big players don't like the regulations because they're normally expensive to adhere to. But I'd say sometimes a lot of large corporations like regulations in place because they're the only ones who have the size and the capital to be able to spend to
Exactly.
do it.
Yes.
And that's a method through which they crowd out smaller businesses, new businesses.
Completely agree with you. You're absolutely right. A lot of parts in regulation setting are at one point set for the right reasons, but implemented in a way that pushes out competitors and smaller players. It makes it impossible for, and that's part of the reason why we have antitrust laws, that you don't want companies to grow so large, that they can actually do this and get away with it. You need to come up with a system, and I completely agree with you there.
Where would you say America is on, let's say, regulation of like producing vaccines?
Regulation, I think it's weird. For vaccines, it's weird because it's almost like all medical development seems to happen in America, and we I think generally Europe has better medicine systems, but they do all of the development and then we just buy the new drugs that they create. So in some sense, they have a worse system, but we're kind of benefiting from it. But generally, I think they're probably laxer overall in regulations generally.
So the problem with the United States. So again, there are two dimensions to the problem in the US, and it is just as true in Europe as it is in the US, but perhaps in a much more exaggerated fashion. The United States has some of the most sophisticated research labs in the world today. The problem starts with, number one, the outlets for selling medication are restricted to a cartel of companies and insurance providers. So if you look at a company like CVS, have you ever been to the US?
Ages ago.
You've been, okay. So if you look at CVS, CVS is one of the largest suppliers of pharma. So they're a pharmacy. They're the high street. You go, you buy your diazepam,
like Boots.
Boots. They're exactly the same as Boots. CVS has shot out almost all independent pharmacies in the United States. They've gotten to a point where they can underbid any other independent local by massive amounts, and on top of that, they're actually selling insurance, and they're closely tied to the pharma companies so that they're getting preferential pricing. So again, it's down to that whole monopoly dimension. If you assure competition properly, you won't have that problem.
I hear your point about once they have that power, they could do some nefarious things with it.
Absolutely.
It's almost like in the interim, that's better for the consumer, right? Because you get cheaper drugs if you need them. Because the local competition are being crowded. It's like why everyone goes to Asda or Tesco's rather than your local butcher's, because it's cheaper and more convenient, which generally people like. There's a reason why they go there and
Absolutely.
they don't go to the other one.
And the small mom and pops have an incentive that the big companies do not, and that is they need to be able to sustain their business to give it to their grandkids. They don't want to sell shitty stuff to their next door neighbors, so they have to hold themselves up to a somewhat higher standard than a company that can legislate out complaints and put you in court for 16 years because the sandwich killed your grandmother. You know what I mean? It's like, no, if it's my shop and I sell you something that hurt you, that's going to hurt me too. But if I'm Merck or Pfizer or Abbott Labs, it doesn't matter if I kill 100 people by accident. I can put these people in court for 25 years and not pay them a cent. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's preventing these kinds of situations.
Do you think somehow they could make laws? Business is business, government's government. That's it. Full stop. You don't get involved in government laws, procedures, bills, whatever. That's it. Will there ever come a day when that will be, do you reckon? So
that's what people are trying to do now.
Yeah.
That's what a large part of the Republican Party in the United States, the party of small government, that's been around since Ronald Reagan. This idea that
you were saying some guy was putting billions and billions to lobby against a monopoly or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the regulation, the antitrust regulations that are part of the United States law were set up in the 1930s and the 1940s after the Great Depression.
Yeah.
They were initially set up by President Roosevelt at the time, specifically to kind of redistribute wealth. That they are like, look, we don't want big companies, we don't want concentration of capital, we don't want concentration of industry, because the results of that led to the Great Depression. So what happened was that it worked. It led to quite literally a housing boom in the 1950s and the 1960s, and the New Deal was also the basis of one of the parts of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Again, the 1960s and the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, and what could not have happened without the New Deal, without the New Deal that was set up. And the interesting dimension to the New Deal is that, and I don't want to tie it to racism, but it comes up to that point, is that the southern parts of the United States, the parts that were implementing the Jim Crow laws and social segregation, the segregation was based on social dimensions and economic dimensions. But if you go up north, they didn't have social segregation, but they definitely had economic segregation. And the words that I think it was William Levitt, the housing secretary at the time, said, we can solve a housing problem or a race problem, but we can't solve both. We can't solve both. Now, you have to understand, this was the criteria that eventually led to Ronald Reagan coming in and saying, we are the party of small government. You don't want to hear someone coming telling you, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. That was the motto of Ronald Reagan and the Republican Party in the 1980s. Keep the free market, and keep the government, government. But therein lies the problem, is that yes, it sounds good on paper, but once you start applying it, you find a lot of these weird loopholes where the finance can control the government, and the government can't do the reverse. That's where the problem is. So you can't have a state. You can't have a state run fully by market forces. Market forces are tyrannies.
So I just don't know. Could you explain, as someone who's very informed about American politics, why the southern states flipped from Democrat Jim Crow laws to Republican? And that seems to have happened in about the last 30 years.
Last 30 years. So that's a good question. You have to remember that Abraham Lincoln was a the Republican Party. And you have to understand something about the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Republican Party was, the word republic came from this opposition of Americans to the idea of royalty. You have to understand that the U.S. was intrinsically opposed to any concepts coming from Europe which involved lineage and royalty. Hence this idea of republic. And they were set up on this idea of a federal republic of states, and that's the basis of what is the Republican Party. So the emancipation laws were not set out of love for black people, but part of the principle that no, we need to abandon these European ideas which included slavery. Now, the interesting thing is that that was what held true largely until the 20th century. And what happened was how do I say this? The Democratic Party remained very much a party of racism well into the 1950s and the 1960s. What flipped was the religious component. The Democratic impetus started, the Democratic Party that we know today started in college campuses and started in big cities, which were largely very individualistic, very somewhat atheistic. They were more Christian than, say, the Russians, but they were still individualistic and very open-minded and free-living and what have you. Whereas the South was very much old-time Puritan ideology. It was very old-time Christianity. So
Puritans might be New England, though, weren't they?
But the mindset, 19th century Puritanism was still very much a part of the United States today. And this whole Dixie Republican aspect came in with Richard Nixon, when Richard Nixon found that by catering and appealing to the prejudice of the southern states, won him a position in office and held it quite securely. So, and that's where the shift happened. It was not an ideological shift; it was a strategic shift in order to survive. So again, you have to recognize the thing with American politics is that the ideology is a means to an end, not the end itself. The end being to maintain hold over key institutions in power.
Do you think Trump will get another term?
I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't want to make so. I hope he doesn't. I am not a supporter.
I liked him at first.
Yeah.
I did. because he stood for, I like a person that stands for his country. I thought, yeah, I'll give him a tick for that. But as time went on, I thought, you turned out a wrong one, you know.
So you're like a nationalist?
No, I just liked him because he
Trump
stood
is a
for
nationalist.
people. He stood for the American people.
No, he never.
He did at first.
No, he
was
never.
saying,
Not at
saying
first.
I'm for
All through his
America.
whole
I'm going
life.
to build a wall.
Sorry, I won't interrupt this.
I'm
Sorry.
going to build a wall. If they want to come into America, they go through the proper procedure, which is fair enough. That fence or wall he built in Mexico and all that. And I heard stories on the news about, he's helping these backwoods country, in the countryside and all them. He's helping all those people in the suburbs, all them. And I thought, that's what we need over here, someone who represents England. But after a while, Trump went a bit off the track a bit
wonky?
You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a bad judge of...
So.
Hey, did you just say honky?
Wonky.
Oh.
I'm a honky-tonk man.
Whoa.
That's right.
Whoa. I better fight him right now. This can't be
Oh, you
forgiven.
don't want to take on this southern boy.
Jokey.
Well, let me tell you something Donald Trump did that I agree with. So you know that I'm not being completely unreasonable with the man. The one thing I agreed with Donald Trump on is to take a more aggressive stance against the concentration of industry and capital in China. That's something I largely agreed with. I was a bit hawkish on China. There's just too much industry and capital concentrated in one country. That's a problem. Whether or not Trump does it, it was a problem for the past 10 years. But everything after that Trump has done is very open to question. And here's why. It falls back to what I was talking earlier with this gentleman about Richard Nixon. Donald Trump did not arrive to his position on principle. What he did was cater to the prejudice of people in his base. So like a TV star. What he did was he had a focus group. He found out that people like this, so I'm going to double down on this. You know what I mean? When whatever it was changed, what's he going to do? He's going to pivot and double down on the thing that it changed to. So he's not a man of principle. Exactly. He's not a man of principle. He's catering to whims and prejudice of people. And
to develop her attitude.
Exactly. So even if it's someone I disagree with, if someone has a principle, you can count on them behaving in a certain way. Whereas exactly. It's like one day people like fish, hey, here's all the fish in the world. They hate fish, fish sucks, what the hell? That's exactly the problem. Cool.
I think you summed up Trump to a T there.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Do you play chess?
Sorry?
Do you play chess?
He's a chess hustler. I'm going to get some tea.
Great speaker. Are you off?
No, I'm getting some tea.
All right.
Bloody hell, we have an observational master here.
That nice.
Say it again.
Very true.
Thank you.
Very observant.
I am Sherlock Holmes.
So we're talking our last speaker never mentioned the why. Why does capitalism, as he so rightly described, why does it take money from the community? What is capitalism's purpose for stealing such wealth? What do you think it could be? What is there?
I think it's just greed.
I think that's one interpretation, but that would mean a very simplistic approach. I think they're a bit more sophisticated than that.
When you talk about capitalism taking from the people,
Fucking hell.
all the rates we pay, food we buy, taxes, the fares, everything, right? It's all been taken by capitalism, yeah?
Yes.
Right. Now, a working man goes to work, he gets his wage, he has to pay all that, look like a gift. But as inflation goes up, capitalism doesn't give the working man or woman enough.
Yeah, we agree on this. The question is why? Why are they taking this? What is their purpose? What is capitalism's
Their purpose is for profit, isn't it? It's for profit.
It's not that simple. Their purpose is to be more, you can't be in charge if you have
if
you have people that are intelligent,
Yeah.
when I mean intelligent, I mean educated,
Yeah.
who are educated, who have power over their own bodies, who have the capability of articulating that a crime has taken place and they demand some justice. What I've described that just now and many other things all requires wealth. Wealth of understanding and education.
Keep that power, that
power. The reason why capitalism steals the money from communities is to steal your autonomy, to steal your right as to become a fully developed human being.
They can't steal my right.
You can't steal his right because he is always right. So he's perfect.
Just keep them all at one level.
That is not greed. And if they ever say it is greed,
that is governing,
they are lying.
They're governing at one level. Keep them at one level. Good.
There's only so much money the human being needs to have a fully fledged and worthwhile life. And that isn't billions. It is relatively, it's hardly any money at all to have an existence to be very proud of, to be fully educated, to be fully cared for through health and the community. This takes minimal amounts of money. But the reason why capitalism is so hell-bent on stealing our money is because it's hell-bent on making sure we never become human beings. And do you know what that is called? That's called slavery. We are become slaves. You can have wealthy slaves and poor slaves.
Good luck.
Defeated by the weather.
Hi mate.
Hey Leon, how you doing? Thank you for all the great work you're doing here. Oh, you sorry, I'm just saying quick hello to Leon.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks for all the great work and putting me online. You are a star, thank you.
So yeah, that was the speech. We have two speakers there.
When's he talking?
We had two speakers there. We had Levy and Mustafa here. It was great. And we had Dusk or one of the two, doing some great stuff as well. And I think that's going to conclude the first half. We'll be back for the second half soon after the intermittent break. Lovely.
You've announced a break.
Thank you.
Right, well,
my throat was fucking killing me, man. I need this.
It's not too bad. This is quite like biblical level. No, not yeah. You know what I mean. No, I mean like I want it like. This is the atmosphere we need. We need it more to us.
So do you think it's socialism is born in this society? Not at all. It would create an equality between men and women.
Yeah.
Between black and white. Yeah. And between people who want to have a decent standard of living, who have the fear. No, but listen, if you were talking, which I heard, the whole notion of socialism, right, is a force that will help people to bring out their true nature. Is that a pompous way to look at life?
It doesn't need to be socialism, but at all. What needs to be acknowledged is that human beings like us have no power. So giving us power isn't socialism, but it's giving people democracy to live in. And therefore we'd actually be heard. You don't need socialism to make a better world. You just need not to be a slave in this society to help make a better world.
But if we stick together, ladies and gentlemen, if we stick together, and with possibility, with brotherhood, with brotherhood, right? We can take on
and sisterhood,
the evils and the corruption that exists today.
Yeah.
With brotherhood
and sisterhood, we've got to get the sisters in as well. Man and women have to stand together. We've got a couple of battles, like race battles,
and what about non-binary peoples?
And
just so we're
what a non-binary
inclusive.
Indeed, and animals.
And animals. Yes.
Yeah, but wait a minute. When we talk as a unity, right?
Yes.
People tend to think, what are you, a mob? Are you a mob going to just throw a brick? No. We have a theory, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And this theory is based on
Last week
a
reading,
focused transformation of
Orby
society.
Dial's novel on Aaron
We're
Burr.
peaceful.
I don't know if you've ever read it.
It's definitely it's on my list.
Fascinating book.
We're peaceful. So,
I wasn't terribly clear.
I mean, what you're trying to say here
verbally
is that we need to have a common agreement of some basic rules of life. And you can be right wing and left wing to come to those agreements.
Yeah, it was.
but there are some
That's-
basics that we need to stand for. Human rights, animal rights, like the welfare of everyone. The resources we gather should try and like alleviate the suffering of all.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be in
Doesn't
the
make-
hands of a few, just running around like kicking mud in the rest of our faces.
It doesn't make you a
Damn
socialist
unfair.
to say those facts.
Yeah, okay.
What it makes you is just a human being who has a very
A decent human being.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll
I
take
don't
it.
e-
I'll take it. Thank you.
I don't want to be using the word decent as such, but Jesus, you're not literally meant to be punching each other in that moment, by the way. It's more of a tag rather than an actual full-blown punch. But, if, but it's about. I think it's gonna.
Individual guy.
What happened?
He's obviously out of his bleeding mind.
What's going on?
As an individual.
How on earth did he manage to pick up a fight by himself with the whole police?
So he's going to take on about 20 cops on his own, is he?
Yeah, he literally was completely bonkers. But that pink dress he's wearing.
Pink dress?
Yeah, pink dress.
Oh yeah.
That pink dress and that massive antlers. Yeah, that's obviously a bit. That is obviously a bit.
Look, them UFOs are coming down.
It's got UFOs. That's why they're firing marshmallows. You think they'd be more assertive,
Just
wouldn't
bear
you?
with me. I'm going to take a closer look at this, right?
Yeah, you tell us about the marshmallows. What's that all about?
There goes the kumbaya.
There goes the kumbaya.
One bloke has managed to pick a fight all by himself. With
I
the
know,
police.
yeah.
He even encouraged a horse. The horse was like, "Fucking let's go, mate."
Well, I guess it gives the police something to be entertained with.
Well, yeah.
We got the journalists going there to report.
Oh, is that what you
So,
said?
Sort of,
before I was rudely interrupted by God
Sorry,
and
yeah.
his bleeding rage. Gah!
that's good.
Yeah.
Before I was saying that, I was saying the why. What is the why? Does
You know, if you
these
do your
people?
trousers like that.
Why do they commit such terrible crimes through the medium of capitalism?
You know, Muslims do that as well. It's
Why?
called Sharia
It's
law.
the why that we need to discuss.
That's it.
There's no
Yeah,
purpose
because the
in
Prophet
just
Muhammad used to have his
describing
skin
the
turned up,
world
didn't he?
unless we also describe in the same
I'm not
moment
very aware of
why
dress
does
customs
capitalism
in 3rd century Arabia.
steal so much
Yeah.
money from the communities.
Well, he
That
probably-
is the purpose. Would anyone like to
What's he
add
talking
a
about?
why?
Yes.
Go for
All
it.
we got to do, we take an individual human and then just analyse their psychology. We just put them in different scenarios and see what impulses they get. So basically, it's greed. Basically, it's greed.
It's not greed.
No?
Capitalism is only a very small minority of the world's population, 1,000 people. And you really think, are you proposing that this small group of people, only motivation in life is purely greed?
No.
Or do you think it could be a little bit more sophisticated?
Yeah, possibly.
What would that more sophisticated
They probably look
reality
like
manifest itself as?
getting laid, having sex.
Oh, come on, this is a proper conversation.
It's a proper answer by me.
Fair enough. Can't argue against
Secondly,
that.
high social status.
So you can get that from just a couple of million.
Okay.
So why would you need a billion on top of that?
Egocentric, egotism.
So you're proposing that capitalism is just based on animal instinct.
No.
You literally just said that.
Well, I would put it.
You have just literally said that right now. You said capitalism is purely based on animal instinct.
I would say there's an incredible large force called animalism that is creating this system.
You just said it right now.
Well, then
I
I
said
agree
there's
with
about
myself.
1,000 capitalists.
Yeah.
And I said it's probably more sophisticated, and you nailed down with actually it's more
Okay.
animalistic.
Okay, I see. Okay.
So you're literally proposing that capitalism is purely animalistic.
Yeah, plus a few other things, but yeah, okay, I'll go.
Well,
with
what are these few other things?
that. Well, because would you call like
Well,
rational,
this
would
topic
you
is
call-
about the why.
Would you call rational thought animalistic?
No, I was told rational thought, rational thought.
But animals produce rational thought.
Do they?
No.
Hey,
I don't want to get into bogged down in the
Sorry.
biology of
A
animals.
dog has a rational
Let's talk about
thought.
capitalism.
There is a form of rational thought in dogs, definitely.
Well, but you don't know that I do either. So why would you destroy?
Yeah, we could say, given stimuli, they would produce certain behaviour to accomplish a goal. Therefore, we can conclude that they must understand that stimuli equals time behaviour gets out goal. So they know of some rationale.
Okay, yeah, like Pavlov's dogs.
So you were proposing some other
They answer to a stimuli.
nuances of what's the why behind capitalism.
Yeah.
You've labelled capitalism as purely animals and incapable of any other motivation.
No, I
so
can't
what
do
are
that.
these other ones?
Oh, okay.
Add to that.
Well, like I said, because there is a lot of rational thought within capitalism.
All right, let's hear this. What is the why?
The why is like if we distribute production or things like this, if we divide labour and things, we can produce more resources. There are some tenets that capitalism hold to that are based on reasons.
Would you not think that's enterprise? Enterprise is used. I mean, we were talking about this about the electric car last week. I was proposing Elon Musk is anti-capitalist because he's actually brought enterprise to the world, and it's anti-capitalist. Capitalism is based on what you described as a very animalistic desire about reality. You use that description, and I'm going to be using your description.
Okay, good.
Well, I happen not to disagree with too much, by the way, but you described that. Elon Musk has gone, let's use reason and let's use a car that doesn't pollute. But why do the other car companies use a car that pollutes? And they know it does. What is the why? What is their reasoning behind using something so damaging to this planet?
Maybe their souls are hungry. I don't know.
Okay, you've said the most profound word, sentence in all a human being can muster, which is I don't know.
Oh, I thought the hungry souls.
That is literally the most profound act of a human being. Something which we should all be proud of. We all don't know, and we all need to develop an understanding. And it won't start saying, actually, I know everything, which is, of course, the very basis of religion.
I actually happen to know everything, but that's beside the point. That's beside the point.
So, do you think, let's go back to these few capitalists that you labelled as animals.
Okay, hang on. Can I unlabel them?
You can't describe something and then go back because I've actually repeated what you said to yourself. That sounds insincere of your own intellect.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. It's just
Be committed.
you make mistakes. You can
Be committed to what you've said. And because all I did was repeat, I didn't even argue against you. All I did was confirm what you said. And suddenly, you're backing down on what you said.
Well, maybe because I
didn't even argue against you.
Maybe I had one capacity of mind. Maybe I had one capacity of mind to see a scenario, and then when the information was fed back to me, I had a wider capacity of mind because I wasn't saying it.
All right, so now you're declaring you were wrong.
I wouldn't say I was wrong. I'd say I'm half right.
So the half an animal.
Half right.
Which half is right and which half is wrong?
All of the good stuff, that was the half right part. All of the stuff where I've closed in my argument too much, there's the wrong part. The limiting factor of the sentence was the wrong part.
Well, I think you should be very proud of your first description.
Thanks.
And
you'll be remarked upon when I give my second one.
And I think it's something that few people would ever utter. And in a community where telling the truth is a crime,
they're big words.
I think that was a very brave and astute thing for you to say. But this topic is, why does capitalism steal money from our communities? What is the why behind that when it leaves so many people destitute and not impoverished? This gentleman was speaking earlier and he mentioned that capitalism has brought people out of poverty, which I disagreed with, because capitalism has no purpose whatsoever in taking people out of poverty. Its total purpose is to introduce poverty everywhere and every single stage.
If one is poor, one is rich. If the rich become poor, you got too poor.
Sorry, I didn't.
No, if one is rich and the one is poor.
Yeah.
If the rich become poor, you get too poor.
Yeah,
it's not good enough.
Yeah, I'm not saying everyone should be equal. I'm saying everyone's equal in law.
Yeah, it's true.
And part of poverty is having no rights in law
Yes,
whatsoever.
I'm sorry to say that,
That
but
is the very
yes,
fundamental
but always,
of slavery. You're always going to have people in society that are more clever,
rich inside.
and they should be
Just
rewarded for their contribution.
Be rich
But your
inside.
intelligence shouldn't be rewarded because your profession is committed to division, hatred, and poverty. You shouldn't be rewarded for that. And yet the top people in our society who get paid the most and are the richest, I'm not talking about a couple of million here, I'm talking about hundreds of millions, by the way, those people are rewarded, not the people that actually speak the truth, like you and me. These people should be rewarded, and nurses and doctors, their actions are truth. A nurse's action is the very definition of truth. Those people should be rewarded, and yet they're punished constantly. Every day, through their work and activity, they are punished. Same with teachers, police as well. They should be rewarded for their contributing to making society safe, and yet capitalism removes that reward from our communities. So the question comes back to, why would less than 1,000 people actually remove that wealth from society? Why would they do that?
Bastards!
Wow, we've created a monster all of a sudden over here. So the reason why is because you can only have power over everyone if you take away their opportunity to become a human being. And that is how you create a slave. How do you don't end slavery by signing a bit of law saying slavery's ended. That does fuck all, which is what happened in the UK some 100 years ago, which is absolutely fuck all, by the way. The way you end slavery is by making sure that every single human being on this planet is equal in law. Equal in law. That's the only way of ending slavery. That's the only honest way and mature.
But that's the same way than just signing a paper if it's just in the law, isn't it?
No, because what happened in this country about a couple hundred years ago was it was just literally written out that, oh, we're not allowed to own slaves directly. And that meant that you could still have slaves, but you had to own them indirectly. And that has been the history of the world ever since.
Yeah, but let's say we wrote a law.
Well, one at a time, please. And he's actually contributing for once to this debate. That's very good. So the way you indirectly own a human being, which they have titled slaves, by the way, is you make sure that all the work that they produce and rewarded for, you take that reward away. You take it through rent, owning their food, owning their education, owning their rights, and not allowing them to have any of these things. Because slavery isn't just about physical chains on a body. Slavery is about owning that entire environment you and your community are in. Whole environment. So instead of working for that community and each other, you are working for the slave owner. That is exactly what indirect slavery is.
When Mr. Wilson was in power...
And thank you for your question and behaving yourself with such distinction today in Hyde Park. Yeah. We had someone laughing here.
No, I think it's great. I think it's great.
I think he's laughing at his statement. Sorry, what you were saying?
I say, when Mr. Wilson and Mr. Callaghan was in power, the country was and the tax was 98% what you earn. The country was in the shit, completely in the shit. What's that?
Unfortunately, a community, I don't base my ideas of the world just on a nation, which is called nationalism. I believe that every human being that is born is entitled to what I've described just now. And because you're a different colour or come from a different community, doesn't make you less of a human being. I believe that fundamentally.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So unfortunately, because capitalism is a worldwide government, capitalism is not business, never has been. Capitalism is a worldwide government which we have no political power over whatsoever. but they own our governments. So that means if a country or a community wishes to be empowered upon themselves, empowered to become greater educated, that's what empowerment is, and not to be a slave, they will rain horrific war on anyone that does that. And the war doesn't just come in the medium of physical weapons, but comes in economic and political war.
This guy said, why don't you speak about more positive things? And then he said he wants to get up on the ladder and speak about positive things.
You want to talk about more positive things, do you? Well, you really don't know me very well. But because I don't appear to be positive in your ear, doesn't mean that describing the world is not actually a positive thing. And because I describe a world that isn't perfect, doesn't mean I'm not being positive. I believe it's positive to recommend that every human being is equal in law. That is positive, and you're missing that law.
No, the situation we are right now, we need something positive like I do.
Yeah, and positive is political action, which...
Okay.
Sorry?
Just let him go. Come on, new speaker to the park.
Do you want to he comes down here?
Yeah. Go on,
well, thank you very much for listening to me, everyone, this park. My name is Dust. And I come with 1 year guarantee not to rust. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes, a catchphrase.
Take some energy, man, but after you have to finish. I'm joking, I'm only joking. Hey, it's me, Florin, and I would like to say something about how to be more comfortable with yourself and just
take drugs. That's how to do it.
No, just take things like as normal. I mean, like if someone say fuck you or you're gonna fucking die, you change and you say like he say you're great and you're the best. You understand me now? Okay, good. Yeah. Then what we gonna do next? Next step is this. We're just gonna keep calm on the way. She's 25 much. After that, everything will be fine. I hope so. My energy, everyone can hear it, can receive the good, positive and nice vibe I have. But what we should do, yeah, I think we should do the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Hold on.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Next step is...
Hold on. Next step is that.
We've got a
I'm coming, so I'll put you on the long list. Yeah? So next step is that like...
I know what the next step is.
We shouldn't drink water from the same place as we do every time.
That's a little bit...
No, I mean like the bigger, you know, the water from the fountain? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, son. Yeah, because why? Because if we drink every day from each around, everyone's gonna be sad. So if you receive the sadness, you'll never heal. How are you gonna heal with the sadness? Because you're already sad and you gain the same as you go and you don't need that. Do you? No, you don't. What we should do, we should appreciate each other, helping each other, and love each other like as the God say. So all I give you, if you make me happy, you will be good.
Yeah.
Do you get my point now?
Yeah, I do.
You'll really be good.
Yeah.
So if you see positive in this guy, I'm getting out myself. Let me say about this guy. You see positive on this guy, don't kill him because he's the only source that you can heal. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
So I'm trying just to make you believe what I every day believe and I'm getting on. I mean, if you can't believe that's something that is not helping you out, then it's your own fault. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Very
second
good.
one,
Thank you.
second one, second one, yeah.
Well done, boss.
Second one, yeah.
Second step.
Is just to Be this, man.
Okay, well done. We got a new speaker.
Alright, like be like, yeah, man. Okay.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, well done,
Okay.
mate, well done.
That's what you have to
Thank
do
you.
these days. Okay, okay.
Okay.
And okay. You wanna go out, Maru?
Yeah,
Yeah, go, mate.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Hello. Should we give a trigger warning?
I don't know if any of you have been in any of the protests.
Yes, I have.
That's going to be the main discussion here.
Okay.
I've been in the protests, all of them basically. I've been in the Black Lives Matter protest. I've been in the anti-lockdown protest. I've been in the anti-Black Lives Matter protest. Now there are some similarities between them, and there are some differences that I would like to explain to you guys, so that you can make your own conclusions about all the three different protests. So the first one that I've been in was the anti-lockdown protest. It was right here, you know, and right here, right around Speaker's Corner.
Corbyn got arrested.
It was exactly.
Yeah, I was
Piers
there.
Corbyn came here and he was arrested in like half an hour, very quickly. He didn't do anything. All he did was speak, and yet he got arrested. We walked around the place over there, and to the other side, you know. To the middle of the park. The police has chased us all the way from here up until that place. They surrounded us, and slowly but surely they started talking to people one by one, threatening fines, threatening arrests, arresting many people, and so the protest ended.
Yeah, welcome to lockdown life.
Not the only one. The second protest against the lockdown, exactly the same thing, except the police in the end let us be because we are basically in few enough numbers that it didn't matter too much. Speaker's Corner has been chased around by the police for such a long time that I can't even remember the last time before, you know, PC Barnes came here, and God bless him, if God exists, that is, that he actually defended our rights here, that he actually let us come here and speak to each other properly, as that is what this place is about.
Pablo, this has been the worst it's ever been in the 10 years I've been coming here. I've never seen it like this.
Exactly. But that's not the only thing. I've been in the Black Lives Matter protest. One of them was on a Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. One of the first ones. I went there. And even though I've seen other protests before that one, for example, the Tommy protest, I've been there. The Brexit protest, I've been there. Every single one of them had opposition. Every single one of them had people with opposing views coming there to show their opposition, to show their disagreement. Not the Black Lives Matter protest. Not a single person to oppose them. Not a single group to go there and say anything that they could say against them. Any disagreement.
So do you disagree with
Do I have to answer you if you won't answer me when you're talking to me?
In law?
I don't have any obligation of answering you. All you do when I speak to you is call my mental sanity into question. So right now, I'll ask your mental sanity into question too.
Do you think Black Lives have any justification in what they're doing?
With the destruction of property, vandalizing of statues, and aggression on the police, intimidation of anyone who would disagree.
Any political right whatsoever?
To
Is
protest.
anything they're doing politically
To protest.
Yeah, no, with their protest.
To protest, yes,
Which
absolutely.
What is important about their protest?
Let me tell you a story.
What is important
Let me tell you a story.
about Black Lives? Can you just quickly
No.
that you're
Let me
actually
tell you guys a
knowledgeable
story.
on Black Lives Matter? I'm just asking.
I'm telling you
how
what
much knowledge
happened.
you
I'm
have.
telling you what happened in the protest.
Jill,
I'm
just
speaking
asking you,
about what happened
you
in the
disagree with
protest.
Black Lives. What is it they're doing that's positive?
I will simply continue. Let me
Name
tell you
one
guys a
thing.
story from the Black Lives
You don't
Matter
know what
protest.
Black Lives are
When I
about.
went there, when I came to
That's
the protest,
fantastic.
I didn't say
Happy.
a single thing to a
Happy
single person.
to
I didn't
criticise
ask.
a group
I didn't
that has
ask
no
a single thing to a
understanding
single
of
person.
that group. Well done.
I didn't ask a single question. I didn't speak even for a little bit. I didn't say anything at all. When I was leaving, when I was going home with a friend of mine, who asked me to not name him, I was filming the huge congestion, huge, line of cars that was created by the protesters who were blocking the streets. When I was filming, I heard in the background somebody say, "Hey, don't film me." I was like, "Okay, sure, I'll just keep going. I'm not filming anyone in particular." Suddenly, a person jumps out of the car, grabs my phone, and gets into my face. I told you not to film me. I told you not to film me. Why are you filming me? I told him, okay, bro, calm down. It's fine. It's okay. What's wrong? He said, I told you not to film me. Delete the video I'm in. I had no obligation to delete the video.
So you ignored him?
I deleted the video in front of him. I asked him, this is the video you're in, and I deleted him right in front of him because there was nothing that interesting. He told me, delete all the other videos. I told him why. Why should I delete the other videos if you're not in them? He started getting very worked up. Oh, you know what? He swung at me.
So your whole criticism of Black
He
Lives
swung
Matter
at me. He
is
swung
this
at
one
me.
man
He swung at
that
me.
you had an
He
integration
swung at
with.
me.
And we don't actually
He swung
know
at me.
it's Black Lives Matter either.
Would you
We don't
like to
actually know
listen?
that.
Would you like to listen to the story to the end?
I'm just helping to
Would
give
you
you
like
more
to listen to the
flesh
story to the
your
end?
story, the bit
Would you?
you're
Okay,
leaving out.
I'll just keep going.
And
I'll
the
just
fact
keep
you
going.
don't know what Black
He
Lives
swung
Matter
at me. I dodged
is
the
even
punch.
about.
I punched him in the face, and then the crowd of Black Lives Matter swarmed in to separate us. All of them, every single one of them, took his side. Even though he started the fight, even though he was aggressive, even though he took my phone and he started making demands. Guess why that is? Anybody on the crowd, guess what's the reason why they took the guy's side?
Prejudice.
What was the guy's side? Why did they take his side? I need somebody to guess. You there.
And also,
why?
with the Black Lives Matter,
Why did they
is
take
the
his side?
far right are deliberately
Because they
attacking
prejudged
Black
you
Lives
to be
Matter
against
and then
their
calling
cause.
that
Because
their
he was
only
black.
purpose.
Because he happened to be black. And in the Black Lives Matter protest, if there's a white man arguing with a black man, then the white man is automatically mistaken.
You don't know what he gives the monkeys about.
Then the white man is automatically
Oh,
mistaken.
you suddenly let speakers talk to you,
When
okay?
I was being separated from him, there were a bunch of people in the protest
heckling me last
who
week.
were white,
But it's
all
wrong
of them,
for you
every
to
single
heckle
one of
people.
them. Every single one of them who took the side of the guy
You're a
were
hypocrite.
white.
That's all I'm
And
establishing
they
here.
went at me,
That's
when
fine.
shouting at me, get out of here, get out of here, we don't want you here, get out of here, you prick. I looked at the face of a girl who was getting very physical with me, who was pushing me with her elbow. I asked her why. She was white. All of the people who separated us were white. I asked her, why? Why should I leave? Because I am white. No answer. Even though she used to shout at me and scream and get very pissed, no answer. No answer at all. I saw in her eyes at that moment, at that very moment, I saw in her eyes. Okay, would you like to?
Yeah, we're listening to him. What I want to hear is that you are committed to letting other people heck other people.
Gus, would you like to leave, please? I haven't finished
But you
yet.
don't do that. What you do
Gus,
do
would you like to leave,
actually
please?
only heckle people you don't like.
Gus, you will have your moment to
Maybe you might learn
speak.
something.
You will have your moment to speak
Will you
soon.
promise to learn something next week? Excuse me. Will you promise not to heckle? Hello.
I will wait until it's possible to
I'm
speak.
a speaker at Speakers
No, don't have your
who deliberately but now you're angry.
Oh my God.
I've made my
You're
point.
unbelievable.
Can you
The man speak.
I'm just like the people that heckle me.
Just go, go, go.
When I'm on
Go.
There's a limit to heckling.
Yeah, tell that to this lady.
No.
Tell that to
This is the problem of these days. You cannot speak anymore. You cannot have conversation with anyone.
Stop it now. Stop it now. Stop it now.
I won't have to heckle myself.
Yes.
You don't like it, do you, far right? When you're
Far
heckled,
right.
What is your
Far
topic?
right.
Yes.
I'm
Please
speaking
don't
here.
put
What are you calling far right? All right, all right. We get silence.
He's a speaker.
And
Thank you.
far
He's a
right,
speaker.
Kay and
And
Pablo,
if you're man enough, go and have your own platform.
and
Go and
guarantee
have your own platform there.
Not let me
No one will
ever
come to
speak.
listen to you.
I just made my point.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
told you a hypocrite.
I won't listen to this guy.
I am now.
Why don't you guys have your discussion over there?
No,
Why don't you guys? Huh?
Take it easy, man.
Oh no, I'm not like you, Heiko. I will gladly answer questions, but I want to say the story. Anyway. I looked at the eyes of the girl. And I saw confusion. I saw an unbelievable amount of confusion and misplaced anger. She was angry, but she wasn't sure with what. There was just something that wasn't right. She just didn't like something, but she couldn't give a reason for it. That was my experience in the Black Lives Matter protest. Let me tell you my experience in the anti-Black Lives Matter protest. Let me tell you my experience. And after I tell you this, you can establish some similarities. Heiko, you can not a single time in your life you have the right to accuse me of heckling anymore. Not a single time in your life, because this is pure heckling. This is pure heckling. I have been. Thank you.
You weren't born last week, were you, heckling? You fucking look at that.
All right. There are people who want to listen to what I have to say. There are some people who want to listen.
You forgot that last week, didn't you?
Huh?
Give it down though, didn't you?
How many times?
I'm doing the same thing here.
What do you mean, Black Lives Matter?
We all look at it, crying about it.
Yeah, there were protests, yeah. Yeah, there were lots of protests. Anyway, let me give you the example of the anti-Black Lives Matter protest that I went to. When I came to the anti-Black Lives Matter protest, the first thing I saw were beer bottles all around the place. Everybody had a beer bottle. Everybody had this semi-drunk smile on their face. Now, when I walked around the place, I met Based Amy. You guys know Based Amy. Just leave him. Leave him be. You guys know which one of you knows Based Amy? Which one of you remembers Based Amy? She knows. Very good. Based Amy is somebody who used to come here and used to film stuff and used to speak to people. She has a very biased opinion, but fair enough, she has the right of her own opinion. She came to the anti-Black Lives Matter protest. She agreed with the people who went to that protest, and they started chasing her out. Why is that? That's the
experience of your meeting. I came to the meeting. I hear Pavlov. The first thing I see, a fight breaking out. So what respect is there?
Why don't you calm down, Heiko? You're getting very worked up. I know Jeremy Corbyn lost the election. You're still distraught by it. You're still triggered by it. But I'd ask you to listen. Well.
Pavlov's ideas go to the core of what it means to be human.
Oh yeah, they trigger him. They trigger him a lot. Anyway, let me finish my story. So in the anti-Black Lives Matter protest, I went there, lots of drunk people, lots of beer bottles everywhere. Eventually, there were a few people, a few Antifa showing up, to discuss with them, to argue with them. You know what happened? They started throwing bottles. And they hit some of their own guys. Some of the guys from the anti-Black Lives Matter protest hit themselves with the bottles that they were throwing. I saw people with their skulls bashed in. I saw people with blood on their heads. Very bloody stuff. When Based Amy was there, Based Amy was simply filming everything. She wasn't talking. Everybody who had a camera, who had a phone, they were told to leave. Not everybody was forced, but at least told to leave, asked to leave. Why is that? Because people had a very big distrust of the media. Because people were afraid of what they do and what they say being used against them in the future. Now, Based Amy was there, and she got into this disagreement with a youth who was there and was also pretty drunk. He asked her to leave. Now, I told him, why should she leave? All she's doing is filming. She's on your side. She's with you. You know what he started calling me? A lefty. A crazy lefty. That's what he called me.
Pavlo, look, this is I totally accept this is an accurate account of your particular experiences on that movement. But I don't particularly see the point that you're
Let me
trying
finish.
to make.
I'll show you the point. I'll show you the point very quickly. Now, in the eyes of that young youth, of that young man, I saw exactly the same thing that I saw in the eyes of the girl on the Black Lives Matter protest.
How big were the pupils?
Misplaced anger and confusion. A lot of confusion. Do you want to come here and show yourself?
I get from you quite
You're very
Misplaced
gesticulative.
anger. What are they confused? Tell us.
They're confused about what they're being told because they believe blindly in the specific dogma that they follow.
What's that?
And they don't care.
What's that?
They don't care what it is about.
What's the dogma they're following?
What's the dogma?
Specific dogma.
Well, for
As you
example,
said.
the protests are dogma. The protests that are happening here.
Specific dogma.
The specific
they're following?
dogma.
The protests are a
Whatever they're
consequence
being told.
of following something.
Whatever they're being told.
So what is the specific dogma?
What's the specific dogma?
What is that?
So the dogma in
What
the
is
Black
that
Lives
they're being
Matter protest was to oppose this far-right, Nazi, evil people all around the place. And the dogma,
Do you want to try and take that back and explain what the thing actually is?
Well,
because you know very well, right, what it is you're opposing. So what is it that they're opposed to? It's not difficult. It's been in the news for weeks.
Well, you want the official account, or you want the account of the actual
tell us
people?
what you're saying.
Me to tell you.
You're saying there's a dogma.
Do you want me to tell you?
Clarify what that dogma is.
No, you don't want me to tell you anything. You want me to
You
not
don't
speak
even
at all,
understand
and you
your
want to
argument.
call me names right now.
What name?
Go ahead.
We genuinely want to know what is this dogma you speak of? Like, detailing.
There are two dogmas, one on the side of the Black Lives Matter protest and one on the side of the anti-Black Lives Matter
Start with the
protest.
Black Lives Matter.
Let's start with the Black Lives Matter
That's the
one.
one you're criticising.
Let's start
You're
with the
not
Black Lives
criticising
Matter
the
one.
far right.
Let's start
You're
with the Black
choosing to
Lives. Let's
criticise
start
the
with the Black Lives Matter one.
So
There's a
for what
belief.
dogma?
There's a belief that here in Great Britain, there's a whole lot of racism. There's a whole lot of.
Right, there's not. Is that what you're
There's a
saying?
whole lot of
And there's
racism.
not, or there is?
It's not a belief, yeah? We don't
Okay,
walk
it's
the same
factually-
road.
factually proven.
Listen, I have names for you. All black people that died in police custody, no explanation. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. I live a different life to you. I live a different life to her because although she's black, she looks different to me.
Right.
My experiences with racism aren't hers. The system, please listen when people tell you this because we're tired of saying it. It's not you personally. We don't have nothing against you. We have.
You should have in his case.
Well, no, in your case, definitely, for sure,
That's
we do.
unfair. Says the Chinese apologist.
This ain't the place for it, though. No, we do, but this ain't the place for it. What we have is the system. The system is set up so we fail and have to work that much more harder to do the little piece of work that you have to do. Do you understand how it is? That's all it is. All we want to do is have the same shit that you fucking do. Nothing to do with you. Break the system so it's fair for everyone. That's what we all want. Me, the Chinese, everybody. Not just black people. Yeah, it's not a thing.
The Chinese
it's not a
want it.
dogma, my
Are you
guy.
sure?
It's a reality.
So
Everybody
is that
wants
You
it.
know what China is
Any
doing to
person-
black people
any
now?
person
They're not letting
who is
them in
not
certain
living
stores.
In La La Land is aware that things need to change.
La La
Whether
Land,
it's
that's
a
what they
black
have in
person,
China.
Whether it's a white person, anybody. So therefore, that's why there's more than just black people here. Do you understand? It's not just us.
Of course.
Other people see it. So when you come off this cloud that you're standing on right now, my guy, you will see it for what it really is. Go and read. Right, you just don't want. Then you just don't want it to be fair, and that's all it is. And if you don't want it to be fair, move along and let us try and work on what the fuck we're working with. Keep your fucking thoughts to yourself. It's wrong. It's fucking racist.
Keep your what?
Listen, your
It's so hard for
thoughts.
him to say it, because otherwise you wouldn't hear it. It's better that he says it,
Well, no.
and you challenge it, than he doesn't
But I
say
don't
it.
want to challenge. I want to challenge.
Hold on,
the
Heiko.
system.
Am I
He's
not
a
letting him
little
speak?
bitch.
Let her speak.
But
Let her speak.
People are there.
Heiko, shut up.
Human beings
Heiko,
are in
Heiko.
between,
Heiko.
like,
Heiko, be quiet. Let her
and
speak.
that, so-
Heiko, be quiet. Thank you. Let her speak.
Who are you to say that?
There is something going on.
What's-
It's not
what's
just
the
here.
dogma? What's
It's
the
not
dogma?
just
What's
in
the saying?
America. It's
What's the
happening
dogma?
everywhere.
won't
It
find
is happening
anybody
in
of colour
any
who
country. This is
disagrees
what
with
I'm saying. In every single country, whether there are only black people there or whether there are only. It's happening every. It's a worldwide problem. It is a virus that is killing us faster than it should. And we just don't want to be killed no more because we don't get the same adequate mental care, we don't get the same medical health care, we don't get the same education, right? Do you know how many black kids are kicked out of school before the age of 16?
A lot.
Right, a lot more than white kids, but the white kids will do the same shit and the
All
black
the
kids will
rest
get
of
kicked
them
out of
streets
school.
doing it.
But please tell me again there's no racism.
Do you think I have more rights than you here?
Yeah, Because if we go over there to them cops there and you tell them that I said something or did something to you and I said I did nothing and nobody saw,
You have a British
who do you think
passport.
they're going to believe? Not the angry black woman,
You
no.
have a British
Not the angry
passport.
black woman, no. Leave it anyway.
Calm down. Do you have a British
You have a
passport?
nice day, but please read.
Do you have a British
Read up on
passport?
your own. Yes, I fucking do.
So you have more rights than
No,
I
I
do.
don't fucking have more rights than you.
Yes, you do have more rights than I do.
It's just because I had
Yes,
to
you
be
do.
here.
I'm a migrant
Listen,
here. I was
listen,
discriminated against
listen,
too.
I'm a fucking migrant here. I wasn't born here. I was born somewhere
But you're
else.
officially
I had-
British. The law doesn't
It
discriminate
yeah,
against
but-
you.
Yes,
We need
listen, it's a long conversation. Go and read.
He doesn't get it.
Go and read.
He's
Just
saying
do some
the
reading.
law doesn't
So is
Get
that
lost
dogma
in
what she's
reading.
Is that dogma? Is that the dogma
What
you were
she's
talking
saying.
about?
This is
Is that
my
the dogma
reality
you were
and
talking
every
about?
other person
So
I know.
look,
And
I think
hers,
this is an
and
idea that
hers,
white people
even
have
though she
certain
looks like
privileges
that,
here.
but from
They
time
do.
they know she's a
I
black
don't have
woman-
privileges over you.
Yes, you fucking do.
No, I
You're
fucking
white.
don't.
I mean, here you're trying to get rid of
So
dark
what?
skin
I'm
people.
white. So
Dark
what
haired
that I'm
people.
white? So what? So what that I'm white?
That's exactly it.
You know that Ukraine is at war right now. You know that people are dying right
I'm
now
not
in
gonna go to
Ukraine,
a private
and
school.
nobody
Believe
gives
it,
a shit.
but that's
Nobody
why we're
accepts
fighting. My
a
guy.
single
But do you not
refugee.
think that's what we're trying
Nobody
to do?
spoke about
We're
it.
trying to
Poland was
break
the
it all
only
down. Do
country
you
in
not
Europe
get
that
it?
accepted any
It's
refugees.
all wrong. None of it
People
should
are
be
dying
happening.
everywhere.
And that's
It's not
what we're
just
saying.
you. Stop
None
with
of
the
it
victim mentality.
should-
You're
it's
not the only
fucking
one
victim.
suffering.
We're all fucking
You are not
victims.
the only
Are you
one
slow?
suffering.
Are you slow?
You must be
We are
slow.
all
Why are you
fucking
calling names?
victims.
Why are you calling
You,
names?
me,
Why are you
we are
calling
all
names?
fucking victims, and we no longer want to
It's
be
not about
fucking
race.
victims.
It's not about race.
Exactly.
It's about what the
But it's
powerful want.
And who are the
The
powerful?
powerful
Are they not all
do
white?
what
Please
they
tell me
want.
again, the powerful are white.
There are many
Was South
powerful black
Africa
people.
not once upon a time run by a white, why by white people by choice? Because that's what they wanted to do.
Are the dictators in
Listen
the
to
African
me.
countries
I'm
white?
saying-
Are they white?
What?
Are the dictators in African countries white?
They used to be in
Are
South
they
Africa,
white?
no?
Yeah, but
South
they're not
Africa,
now.
no? Yeah,
Are
because
they?
they've just left. They've just
They
left.
just left.
In your,
Quite
my
a while
lifetime, and I am not 40, they've just left. You see it? So that's nothing at all. What
But
I'm
they're not
saying
white,
is,
are they?
the Ukraine, what's happening in the Ukraine, what's happening in Palestine, what's happening everywhere, should not be happening. That
course
is
it
the
should.
point.
Of course.
So we are trying to break that system that keeps us all under that umbrella to be fucked over. Do you not get it?
You're
Do you not get
protesting
it?
a death of one man in the USA.
No, no,
What does this have to do with
It's
the
not
UK?
one man. It's not one man. It's not one man.
He is one man. What is he, a woman?
It's not one man.
And that's just the ones that could fit on this
In
shit.
the UK.
That's just the
UK.
ones I could fit on
What
this.
does the UK have to do with it?
Everything.
It's a
People,
problem
black
in
people
America.
dying
It's a problem in
without
the USA.
explanation in police custody. Should the police be killing people? Should the police be killing people?
That's
Or
UK.
should- So why are they doing it? And that's just the names I can fit on this shit. And that's just the ones we know about. What about the ones the families didn't come and speak up? What about the... Why is it okay? Any of it.
It's not okay. I'm
That's
not
what
saying
I'm saying,
it's okay.
and that's my point. That's why we're here.
So where's the
And you have
None
the
of
right
it
to
is okay.
protest.
None of it. We're protesting everything. You're not
Of course,
understanding.
you have the right to
Obviously,
protest.
I don't want to die while I'm protesting.
Excellent.
That's the most important point. And
Excellent. You know,
as a
people
black
died
person,
in the
I'm more
Ukrainian
likely to
protest.
die.
A gentleman
So
over
that's
there,
first
he
and
mentioned the
foremost.
Ukrainian protest. 100 people died, were shot by the government. Huh?
69 Nigerian Christians were chopped to pieces.
Is this relevant?
There you go. Oh, it's not relevant. 69 Nigerians died.
You will always be diverted.
Why is it not relevant?
No. Yes, it's relevant. But right now, I'm in the UK. I'm in the UK. We need to fix this so we can go back to Nigeria and fix that. But that one was caused by who? Africa was caused by who? Africa was broken by who? Africa was broken by who? Of course it's broken. How rich is Africa? How rich is Africa? How rich is Africa? Who owns Africa? Who owns Africa? Everything! It has everything to do with it. Colonialism, imperialism, they all line up. You don't get it. It just leads on to the next system. She needs to fucking read a book.
Okay, hold on,
I knew
hold on.
what she was when she was standing
Look,
here.
guys, I'll give you an example. I am from Ukraine. I am from Ukraine. Ukraine has never once, through its history, owned a colonial empire. What do I, as a white person, have to do with slavery of the black people by the British Empire? What do I have to do with it? Absolutely nothing. So what does this have to do
except
with
that
whiteness?
the money,
What does this
the
have to do
money
with
that
whiteness?
was made in that era is what is fueling everything today. It's
What do
what
I
is
have to
fueling
do
the
with it?
system.
What do I have to
and
do with
that's
it?
what we want to
What
blame.
do I have
we
to do
don't
with it?
blame you. We're
Yes, you
blaming
do.
the
You're
money
talking
that
about
was
white
made.
people. I am
It's
a
the
white
money.
person.
The
You're
money.
not saying, who am I?
The money. It's the
Am I
money.
grey? Am I
The
black?
money
Am I
built this
yellow?
system.
Am I orange?
White is not color, man. White is not color. Look at your shirt.
What am
Are
I?
you white?
What am I? What am I?
You're not white. Look at the shirt.
What am I?
White,
Okay, I'm
white
not
is a
white.
behavior.
I'm not white. What am I?
White is a
What am I?
behavior. It's
What
a
am-
group of
white
people.
is a behavior.
Okay?
You know, white is a
when
color,
you say
man.
white, it's not only English people that kill black people.
Bro, what
It's not
am
only
I?
English people,
What
but
am
we
I?
know.
What am I?
We know the people that are
Answer
doing
me.
it.
What am I?
What
am I?
Because you're not white.
What? I'm yellow. Excellent.
No,
I'm yellow.
no,
now.
you're not white. Shall I tell you why you're not white? Right? Go to Palma there. Go and see if you can get a job. They throw you out because they
Yeah,
think
I'll get a
you're
job
a foreigner.
if I try.
No, not in there.
Where?
Not in there, man.
I don't know. I don't know what your point is
Listen,
anyway.
there are establishments in this country where you can't get a job because you're not white. Whiteness is
But
not
I
just
am
about
white.
this. No.
Okay. I mean, apparently I'm yellow.
You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, man.
I'm telling you guys, look, my point is this, that many people in the protests are acting violently on both sides, on the Black Lives Matter protest and on the anti-Black Lives
Do you know
Matter
who's
protest.
acting violently? The violent state that we have, the capitalist.
Here, in the UK.
In the UK, where over 1,700 black people have died due to police brutality, and that's just counting. And we're not talking about the amount of deaths due to poverty or due to inequalities in the healthcare system or poverty or things created by the housing situation. Exactly. It's very clear.
Unless you're denying the
we have a system of systematic racism which perpetuates it globally, not just in the UK or in Europe or in the USA, but all over the world, because we have had a history of the systematic erasure of black and brown people from this world through imperialism, colonialism and racialized capitalism, which has left black and brown people in a lower state, and that's fact. You need to look at any statistics.
If you are being
about that.
oppressed so much, why are you being allowed to speak right here?
What
do you mean, come on?
What do you
No.
mean?
In
Oppression
China,
is
people
based-
can't say anything. In China, people can't say. Why is nobody talking about what China does to black people? How they don't
We
let them
are.
into schools?
But also,
Are you?
people
Are
are
you?
talking
Where's
about
Heiko? Where is
China,
Heiko? Heiko fled. Heiko left. Where is he?
I don't know if you just
He left.
listened. I don't know if you just listened to what I said, but I just said it's a global issue. Anti-blackness is not just situated in one state. But at the end of the day, guess what? We're in the UK, so we're going to talk about the UK because that is we're paying taxes to them, we're voting for them, so therefore I have a say in this country. And just because you don't like that, what? Because I'm able to vocalize that and have freedom of speech, that means I'm not allowed to complain about my oppression.
Of course you're allowed to complain about anything. You're allowed to protest about anything. You're allowed to. I'm not against that. I am against the destruction of property, destruction of monuments, and violence on the police.
You just said, if you're so oppressed, then how come you're able to speak your point?
Yes.
Meaning that you are minimizing the struggle and the ability for the state and the media and these forces to oppress my ability to vocalize. So that's the reason why people are protesting, because guess what? The platform that we're used to be able to share our grievances is not being heard through the state.
How many more testimonies do you need?
Exactly.
No, seriously. If it was the other way around and you were doing this to us and you were telling us about the struggle about in your country, how many more testimonies would we need before we can understand you might be onto something here? How many more? Point to anyone of colour. How many more people do you need for you to understand?
Well, maybe the testimonies of the black people with who I work and who disagree with you guys.
I've never met you a day in my life. I've never met that sister there a day in my life. I promise you we're on the same page. Shake
Do
hands on one.
I only have credibility if I speak about this if I am black?
You would have more credibility, but not only
credibility. So it is about race after all.
Black lives matter.
Yes,
there
they
is
do.
a race element there.
Excellent. But does that mean nobody else can speak about the movement?
Listen to what I just said to you. You
Yes.
will not have only credibility if you're black.
Yeah, but you have more credibility
because you
according
would
to you.
share an
Because
experience
you have lived
that I live.
experiences.
You
You
can't
do not
live my
experience
experience.
I
racism.
lived racism. I experienced racism
Yes,
in
and
my
I can't
life.
live
I've been a
Ukrainian
migrant my whole life.
That's not racism.
What are you guys talking? It's not
That's
racism.
xenophobia. Learn
Oh,
the difference
it's
between
not
systems of
racism. Okay.
learn the
Are you
Why is it
oppressed
not
because of the
racist?
colour of your skin
Why
or
is it
your
not racist?
culture?
let me explain to you why it's not racism. Racism is the systematic, I'll stress on the systematic oppression of a group of people based on their race.
That's a question. What's the answer?
The systematic, so it needs to be systematic.
No, it means that racism can not only be interpersonal, it has to be based on a power of which group has the ability to implement structural and institutional.
Okay, I've heard this so many times, and it's such a vague definition. It's a horrible definition. Racism is not prejudice plus power. Anybody can be racist. Anybody, even if they're powerless. I can be racist. You can be racist. Anybody, rich or poor, can be racist.
You, as a white man, will never experience racism the way
That's bullshit. I've experienced racism in my life plenty of times.
I'm not just doubting that you've experienced prejudice, discrimination, xenophobia, oppression of multiple forms.
Do you have any idea how many times the Hebrew Israelites here called me a white devil? You have no idea how many times that happened.
I do not have the power to mean that if I call you a white devil, does that mean that will have impact on your ability to be stopped by the police, your ability to get a job, your ability to be able to be have a house? I can use discriminatory words against you. I would not choose to because I'm against.
You can use them.
I'm saying I would not choose to. Anyone, I'm saying people can say them because guess what? We do have freedom of speech, so someone could walk down the road and call me an N-word, and I can't do anything about that. So you can do that. Someone could do that, but that doesn't make it racism because they do not have the same systematic power to implement that. Because racism, as I said, is built of structure as well as interpersonal relationship. It's not just a simple fact. Well, that's the fact of what it is. White people have.
Says who? Says the media.
Says history. Says the fact that white people have never been. No. My point is, name to me a country, a system, a colonial power which is prejudice and set up their system on the
point,
destruction of the
point
white race.
went down the drain because the point was, if you're going to protest, do it peacefully. Do peaceful protests, speak, don't fight, don't destroy property, don't throw bottles like the DFL threw bottles. Don't do that because your point will not be taken seriously.
Black people, they are all kinds of people. Black people, they are not the same.
No, you've done well, man. You try your best.
You think black people, they are all the same. Take this. Like who are? Say it.
Content over everything. From your
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. Listen.
COE.
Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. I don't even listen to Sky YG. I just listen to COE. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. I don't even listen to Sky YG. Man, just listen to COE. Man, just listen to COE.
English.
Why?
COE.
Control over everything.
COE. Man, not even know BBC. Man, not even know ITV. Not even listen to the MUN.
We don't
listen to COE. Sorry, I'm lying.